Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all! Welcome once again to the Kindred UMC pre-recorded live show, coming to you not live but pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden. I'm the pastor of Kindred UMC.
My name is Delisa, and I just bought my first Samsung brand new washer and dryer on my own.
That's exciting.
Thank you. Very exciting.
And I'm Preston, and I've got nothing.
Okay.
Just to rub it in.
Delisa is joining us this week because we've had some scheduling conflicts, and Courtney could not make it tonight. However, we shan't be deterred, and we will continue with our study of the first several chapters of the book of Leviticus. Before I continue on with our book of Leviticus chapters, I'd like to ask you, what's your experience with the book of Leviticus?
Well, from watching your lovely previous series that you've been going through.
It's always really nice to meet a fan.
I've gotten that homophobes get their verses from Leviticus.
A lot of them, yeah.
And it's like what's the word? Like rules or whatever? Like what to follow?
Yeah, there's
Leviticus,
a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot of rules or something.
It is a book of laws.
Laws
for sure.
Or something.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got.
A lot of people have a real down view of the book of Leviticus, but the title of this particular series is The Gospel According to Leviticus, and gospel means good news, so we're going to extract some good news. Did you know that the first 3 chapters of the book of Leviticus are all optional sacrifices about celebrating and expressing gratitude? You said you've been watching, so the answer should be yes.
Yes. Yes.
Again, throwing sacrifice around like it's just something we do.
Yeah, that's...
And that doesn't jar anyone who's reading the rest of it.
Right.
But this part's like, yeah, slit a lamb's throat. Who cares?
Well,
just
we sacrifice all the time. Every time, like when we watch the fights for UFC, we watch Super Bowl parties and stuff, and almost every time I'll smoke a brisket or like roast a lamb leg or something. I'll do some kind of barbecue. That's a sacrifice. That's what sacrifices typically were. Now they were a little more ritualistic, and there was a lot more deliberate meaning imbued into the process of cook. But essentially, sacrifices were barbecue, and so we still carry that tradition on to this day. So the first 3 chapters talk about 3 different types of sacrifices that are all about, they're optional, they're like celebratory. We're now crossing the threshold into the 4th chapter, where we're going to start to talk about ones that they're not exactly optional, they're what you do when something specific happens. And the first one that we're going to look at in that category, chapter 4, it's the purification. We'll read it first and then I'll talk about it. Okay. Now, it's important to remember the book of Leviticus is a manual. It's an instruction manual.
That's what I was trying to say.
So it's going to read like an instruction manual. It's not like a fun story. It's going to be like, then you pull the carburetor out and detach it from the joints with the...
There's 4 screws.
3/8.
4.
Yeah, right, yeah. Like that's how this one reads. So just prepare thyself. The Lord spoke to Moses. This is not an introduction we've heard in the other ones, except for the very, very beginning of the book, and it's signifying like a transition into a next section. So, the Lord spoke to Moses. He's been speaking to Moses the whole time, but they're saying it now because it's like, and part 2 of the sacrifices, you know. So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, when anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and does any one of them, if it is the anointed priest who sins," so these are the actual Levites who are doing the sacrifices. So anyone who sins unintentionally, they don't realize they're sinning and then they do something bad. If it's a priest who sins, thus bringing guilt on the people, he shall offer for the sin that he has committed, a bull of the herd without blemish, as a sin offering to the Lord. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent meeting before the Lord, and lay his hands on the head of the bull. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. The anointed priest shall take some of the blood of the bull and bring it into the tent of meeting. The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is in the tent of meeting before the Lord, and the rest of the blood of the bull he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of the sin offering, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is around the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys, just as these are removed from the ox of the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn them into smoke upon the altar of burnt offering, but the skin of the bull and all its flesh, as well as its head, its legs, its entrails, and its dung, all the rest of the bull, he shall carry out to a clean place outside the camp, to the ash heap, and shall burn it on a wood fire. At the ash heap it shall be burned. So you can hear the instruction manualness of this. Like, it's very like, you do this, you take these parts, you do that, the rest of it you bring all the way out. Like, it's very instruction manual. If the whole congregation of Israel errs unintentionally, so that's for if a priest does it. Now, if the whole congregation of Israel errs unintentionally, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, and they do any one of the things that that by the Lord's commandments ought not be done to incur guilt, when the sin that they have committed becomes known, and the assembly shall offer a bull of the herd for a sin offering and bring it before the tent of meeting. It's a lot of the same similar stuff, so I'm going to skip ahead. When the ruler sins, doing unintentionally any one of all the things that by the commandments of the Lord his God ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, once the sin that he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring as his offering a male goat without blemish. He shall lay his hand on the head of the goat. It shall be slaughtered at yada, 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 yada. If anyone of the ordinary people among you sins unintentionally in doing any one of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, when the sin, yada, yada, yada. If the offering you bring as a sin offering is a sheep, you shall bring a female without blemish. You shall lay your hand, and again, this is more of the, there's some assumption going on in here. Anyway, you get the idea. This is what happens when somebody commits sin, or the congregation commits sin, or a priest or a ruler or just anybody commits sin and doesn't understand that they've done something wrong. They then have an opportunity to do something to alleviate that guilt. What do you make of that?
2 things.
Okay.
I noticed that as, like, depending on the type of person, they had a different animal to sacrifice.
Yes.
And also,
if you're a ruler, it's a goat. If you're a priest,
it's a bull.
It's a bull. And if it's the whole congregation, it's a bull.
And do they only make the sacrifice if somebody else finds out about their sin, or is it they have to confess?
Well, the base of all of this is somebody does something wrong, but they didn't know they did something wrong.
So somebody else did notice. And
then once it becomes known, this is how you kind of address that problem. And you're right, there are different levels. So like if a priest does something wrong, that's a heavier toll than if the ruler does something wrong, and that's a heavier toll than if just kind of like a normal everyday average person does something wrong. And then also the whole if the whole congregation does something wrong, then that's heavier than if just like one person does something wrong.
So a priest can be wrong?
Yes, absolutely.
Seriously?
They're a human, aka.
No. That's not what I was taught.
I dare not say so.
That's not what I was taught.
Everyone, every ordained and sanctified and holy person except me.
Yeah, you don't wear a robe.
Yeah. But the joke you're bringing up is actually something that's very, very important. This is part of the good news of the book of Leviticus. So in order to understand why this is specifically good news, because it kind of just sounds like a bunch of rules, like, oh, if I screw up, I have to do all this stuff. Let's look at it from the other perspective. People who, in this day and age, when this was written, believed in a pantheon of gods, all of whom were bigger and stronger and they believed like mountains were gods. They believed the sun was God. They believed when the floods come that was an act of gods. They believed that when there's a famine, that's an act of gods. When there's some kind of a hurricane, they don't have weather patterns in their heads. They don't understand an eclipse. They don't understand the celestial movement of the solar system. When things happen, it's the gods. And almost always it's the gods don't like us very much. Like, we're doing everything we can to please them so that they don't destroy us because we are fragile. We need food, we need rain, but not too much rain, because if it's too much rain, we flood. It's a lot of this kind, and so they're just constantly nervous about how the gods feel about them. That's the mindset of the people that this gospel message comes to.
Just those people?
Well, I mean, like,
not current people right now that have horrifying nerves and mind-altering things.
Well, and particularly, we'll get there because we can talk about stuff that's gone on with COVID, stuff that's gone on with Ukraine. Stuff
and
then also we can talk about the superstition of Christianity that it's like
just being in church.
If I don't believe or pray the right way, then God won't give me what I need.
And He knows.
Yeah, there's a
and
bunch
He
of that
knows
kind
you're
of stuff.
wrong. Yeah.
The Gospel of Leviticus says the opposite. It says, hey, to everyone out there who's not sure about where they stand with God, because one of the many fears is like, what if I sin and I don't know? Like, what if I pissed God off and I didn't know that I did something wrong? Like, am I just going to walk around and God's going to be mad at me? There's a process for that. If you listen, the only time you have to make a sacrifice is when you realize that you've done something wrong. When something you've done wrong and you didn't know gets brought to your attention, then what you do is you bring a sacrifice to God. We're going to have a barbecue. God will be pleased. God will forgive you, and everything will be made all right. And so it's actually this good news about you don't need to walk around in the fear that this God has malintent for you, all the other gods.
Keeping track of every little thing.
All the other gods might get annoyed with you, or that you might do something that you didn't even know you weren't supposed to do that makes them mad at you and brings their wrath upon you. This is a God where you don't have to worry about that.
A little less bipolar and narcissistic.
Yes.
This not is mad at every single turn. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? And if you are worried about that, if you think you've sinned and you didn't mean to, this is all you have to do is, and then there's this process for it. And there's different levels, if you're a ruler, you bring a goat. If you're an ordinary person, you bring something less. You bring what you can afford. And if you can't afford that, then you can go get this. And so everyone from every level can have the opportunity to, if you think you messed up, but you didn't know you were messing up, here you go. Just do this. So, have you ever messed up and didn't know you were messing up? Have you ever done something unintentionally that then later you go oh man, I didn't know I was doing that. That happens to me a lot where I'm slipping, things slip out of my mouth. I will find myself often these days, and this is the thing that I'm actively working on. I really enjoy debate and disagreement. I thrive in it. I love it. It makes me excited. I enjoy it. And I often, when I feel like it's a little energetic, I will check in with people and be like, "Are you? I hope I'm not like running you over or anything. I'm having a good time. I hope you're having a good time. Do you want to keep going?"
I have been a buffer to so many of your conversations where it's been like, no, tell him no, call him, it's okay. And if he's mad, I'll deal with him. And it's never ever come to that. It's always been like oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
What I discover is that even when I'm like, hey, you're having a good, this is fun, right? That people are like, yeah, I'm having fun. They're like, no, they're not. Like, they're not at all.
You're backed into a wall.
Because I'm like, I want to talk, I want to hash it out. I want to like get to the bottom of things. And nobody else does. I do get a little frustrated because often it feels to me like people just want to like, oh no, I don't want the truth. I don't want to discover the truth and disagree and like discover something. I just wanted to say what I believed without it being challenged at all, and I don't want any disagreement at all. I just want to say something controversial and then go away and have no consequences for whatever I said.
Because I didn't like what Mommy and Daddy did.
Well, and I'm like, and I find myself going like, I don't want to. I mean, okay, I certainly don't want to be mean to you about it. And so, like, I'm still wrestling with where I am in that. But because I am flawed, I often err too far on the side of, I'll go aggressive, which to me feels normal, and to someone else feels like, and I find myself having to go back and be like, I shouldn't have come on so strong. I didn't know I was doing that. I thought we were having a good time. I thought we were enjoying ourselves, and you obviously weren't. And that, I didn't mean to put anybody off. Or, like, I'm finding myself doing that a lot. And as a person I'm not a literalist about Scripture, but that's the version of this. Do you find yourself in a place where you did something and you didn't know that you were doing harm at the time, but now you realize you did? There's a thing you can do about that. And it's called an apology. It's called swallow your pride and admit where you were wrong and like go and try and make amends with the person,
The first thing that I thought of was just a small slip up of me saying something that came off the wrong way to my sister who just had a baby, and she got super offended and like clammed up on the phone, and I was like, no, like, please, I didn't mean it like that at all. Like, tried explaining what I meant to her and like had to cool her down for her to understand. That was the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
The second thing I thought of was...
But that's exactly what this is. Like, that's what this is for. Because, now let's say in an imperfect world, which is what we live in, let's say your sister just couldn't bring herself to forgive you for it.
Mm-hmm.
The Gospel of Leviticus says, as sad as that is, because that would be very sad, you don't have to worry about your standing with God in that.
Yeah.
The fact that you recognized that you did something wrong and then took and apologized and tried to make amends and did your best.
In good faith.
In good faith.
Not
it's
following instructions and just killing animals, which...
Right. Well, and the reason for the logistics here is so that it was so that the people could know that if they did this, it was that they didn't have to worry about God smiting them, But I think a modern interpretation, exactly what you just said. No, I didn't mean it that way. Please, let's try and get back. Let's try and reset. Let me take that back. I apologize. I want us to be able to still be in relationship together. Like, that's the modern day equivalent of you shall bring a goat before the Lord. Like, it's an actual recognition and an actual in good faith step forward to say, I want to reconcile. I want to make up for what I did wrong, that I now understand. I didn't understand then, and now I understand. Yeah. That's exactly what this is. And when you do that, God is pleased. Sorry, you
my
had another
second
one?
example was I knew what I was doing was wrong while I was doing it, which was lying to like my entire family for a long time, and then
we're going to talk about that
next week.
That is another one of the offering, the sin offering. It's a guilt offering.
Oh yeah.
There's one that's when you do something and you didn't realize what you were doing was bad,
and one that you know what you were doing was bad.
I think it's the 6th chapter. There's one where when you know what you're doing is bad and you do it anyway.
And then it wasn't until after that I realized how bad it affected everything.
Yeah. So 2 weeks from now, we'll talk about that.
Okay, I'll be back.
We'll invite you back. You can tell that story. Preston, have you anything?
Being a big mouse and making more fun of things that don't always need to be fun. Making light of situations that don't necessarily need to be light. In the first 5 minutes it happens.
Yeah.
Maybe letting it air out a little bit and then making it light later for others to enjoy, and not dwell on sad things because it's my nervous tick is to be in a bad moment. And also not knowing beating myself up was bad. Learning from somebody else that is on the other side, seeing it, going, you're giving yourself black eyes, man. You got to stop because you're not going to be able to see anymore. And then hearing it also from work too, from like a worker bee standpoint. Like, you can't be the worker bee all the time. You got to sleep.
Yeah. So the first one I like to lift up in particular because we live in a world where we are all subject to. Nobody gets out of childhood clean, is what I always say.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's got defense mechanisms, coping strategies. Everyone's got kind of gut reactions to things that are a little more sensitive, and so you kind of, maybe your defense mechanism is to make light of something that should be serious for someone else. And there's also no perfect rule for any of that. For some people, making light is actually what they want and need, and for some people, when you make light, and then for some people, making light isn't their defense mechanism. Maybe their defense mechanism is like going super hard, but there's all kinds of little things that we have inside of ourselves. Everyone has that, and you don't need to fear that if you're not perfect, you're in bad standing with God, and you're in bad standing with your community. Because that's the other thing too, these sacrifices are communal events. Mm-hmm. It's not just about reconciling with God, it's about still belonging and having a place in the community. And that's what these sacrifices do. You know that if you screw up, you have the ability to still engage and be part of the community. You don't have to worry about being excommunicated from your relationship with God or from your relationship with your neighbors. And that's ultimately what these are about. So if you find yourself kind of overwhelmed with oh man, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that, or I wish I would have done that differently, there is permission and good news in the gospel of Leviticus that is, you can let yourself off the hook by simply acknowledging that what you've done, you now understand you shouldn't have done, seeking to do your best to make amends, and you can know that God will be pleased, and that, at least I can speak for our community, that you have a place among the church and among the community of gathered body of Christ that you belong in. You are a part of us. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
And women.
All men.